Minimum Wage Sentai. By Stephen Bova. Chapter 7 From Zero to, well, he's still a zero. William Hawkins lied in his small twin-size bed. It had actually used to be a bunk bed, but it had been separated by a local thrift store to try and make more money. Hawkins bought the top half, and it allowed him to store things underneath his bed because it was now a good 3 feet off the ground. As he slept, he was covered from the waist down with an old white blanket, which had flowers all over it. This used to belong to a large set, but once again, Hawkins only bought the parts he wanted from the thrift store. On his feet rested a large black cat. This cat was large in both length and girth. This cat's name was Catzilla. Catzilla's eyes were green, and he was extremely fluffy. On his neck rested a red dog collar, because he was too big for any cat collar. On Hawkins' bare chest, besides the multiple scars from years of fighting, rested a small gray cat. This cat was named Midget. She was about the size of Hawkins's hand and she was also fluffy. Both cats were long-haired. Midget was actually fully grown, at this point, hence why she got her name. Her eyes were yellow and she wore a kitten's collar which was colored pink. Next to his bed lied a nightstand with two things resting on it, a cartoon Candyman covered clock, and a sticker-covered laptop. The clock's time was flashing because there had been a power surge over the course of the day. Hawkins worked night shifts, so he slept most of the day away. His job had him on a seesaw schedule as well. That meant, if he was working one day, he was off the next, never allowing him to actually rest up from the hard labor he had done the day before. This made him even more of a joy to be around for other people. The door of the small townhouse he lived in, which used to belong to his brother, began to open, and the two cats perked their ears up, and jumped off Hawkins. As they jumped off to hide underneath his bed, Hawkins woke up. As he sat up he was hit in the neck with a tranquilizer dart. As the dart hit his neck, he grabbed his body and then got out of the bed as fast as he could. He was naked, as he stood in front of his attackers. 3 men stood in front of him, all dressed in camouflage. Then an older woman walked up behind the men. "My word," said the woman as she covered her view of Hawkins's manhood, "he's naked. Take a picture, it will last," and before he could finish his statement Hawkins's passed out and collapsed like a ton of bricks. As he lied on the floor Catzilla and Midget meowed at him. "Take him, grab him some clothes," said the woman, who was also dressed in camouflage, "make sure his cats are taken care of. Food, water, litter box." "Seriously?" asked one of the men. "Do you want him to wake up and find out you let his cats starve, or out of his house?" she asked as she looked at the men. "Thought so," she continued. "After all, the man's killed people before because he was told to, and you've seen what happened to them. Imagine what he'd do if he wanted to do it," and she went to leave the room and she looked down under the bed and saw the two cats. "Cute," she said before leaving the room. "I'll get the clothes and carry him downstairs," said one of the men. "You two figure out who's feeding and who's doing the box." "I'll feed," said the smaller man. "You bastard," said the third. "Too late, I called it," said the second. "Some crack commandos," said the first, fighting over who has to play with cat shit, and he picked Hawkins's up off the ground with one arm and placed him on his shoulder. From the way they were covered, you couldn't tell the race of any of the soldiers, but where the men wore masks, the female in charge did not. She had silver hair, blue eyes, and wore light pink lipstick. They all wore the same uniform, but she had more bars than the men did. The man who carried Hawkins's was close to 7 feet tall and very muscular. The other two were between 5 and 6 feet and had average muscles. After they had taken care of their assignment, they left the house and closed the door, making sure the two cats would not escape to the outside. "He has an alarm," said the woman, as she then hit a button on Hawkins's cell phone. She had found it charging in the kitchen, next to a microwave and a pizza oven. Hawkins only ate microwave dinners and store-made pizzas. He couldn't cook. As she hit the button, the house's alarm system was activated and the four all got into their Hummer and drove off towards the train station, which would take them to Washington, D.C. As they pulled into the station, Hawkins began to mumble, but they shot him again with another dart. "Don't wake up yet, Sleeping Beauty," said the woman as she hit Hawkins and he fell back into his sleep. "Wouldn't that make him a blonde woman?" asked one of the smaller men. "He can be a princess if he wants to," said the other. "Will you two shut up?" yelled the tallest man. "It's a freaking saying, he's not a princess, and she's just telling him to go back to sleep," and he picked Hawkins up and the four of them began to walk towards the train platform. This was no regular bullet train, this one was used by the US military. The Hummer they arrived in was even being put on the train. The tallest man had picked for Hawkins to wear, a royal blue t-shirt, tan pants, and the steel toe boots he wore to work each day. He just grabbed the first pair of socks and underwear he saw in Hawkins's basket where he kept them. He had had a dresser, but all the drawers were filled with old movies on physical formats like DVD and Blu-ray. He had his clothes in a laundry basket which sat on top of the dresser. When Hawkins finally woke up and was allowed to wake up, he found himself in a medical bay in the Pentagon. "Where am I?" he asked as he held his head as he sat up. "You're at the Pentagon," said a doctor as she looked at the machines that were attached to Hawkins showing her the condition of his body. "I've been shanghaied, haven't I?" he asked as he looked around and saw no one else in the room. "Yep," replied the doctor as she took a tablet out and began to type on it. She was between 5 and 4 feet tall, fair skin with red hair. She wore green framed glasses on her face and purple scrubs on her body. "Damn," said Hawkins as he lied back down, "I'm still hungover," he said as he covered his eyes. "That could be the drugs they shot you with," replied the doctor. "No, I drunk half my body weight last night," replied Hawkins with a laugh. "So it's come down to this," said Zordon as he and Puppy walked into the medical room. "This world's last hope, a drunk," he continued. "I'm a social drinker, you smock," Hawkins replied. "Besides, I was celebrating, didn't you hear? I'm dead," and Hawkins raised his head and gave Zordon the finger. "I told you if I ever saw you again, I'd kill you, Zordon," continued Hawkins as he looked over at the alien who had now entered the room. "What's your problem, boy?" asked Zordon, still complaining about the cards you were dealt in life. "I made the logical choice when I grabbed you all those time. The needs of the world was greater than your own." "Shove that Star Trek shit up your ass," Hawkins said in an angry tone of voice as he went to stand from his bed. "I'm gonna kill you, rip that tongue of yours right out of your throat." Hawkins's eyes looked as if they belonged to a crazy person. "That's your greatest fear, isn't it? Having one of your little fighters turning against you." "Well, he's a bit of a fixer-upper, but his DNA is the one we need to make that changer work," said Puppy as he entered the room, breaking the tension between the two. He walked over and placed his paw out for Hawkins to take it. Hawkins glanced down at Puppy and then took the paw of the robot. "Welcome back to the team, Billy,"